Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to our afternoon and final session of this mandatory administrator meeting. Before we get into the meeting, I want to kick the meeting off and allow Commissioner Dr. Jerome Singleton an opportunity to say a few words to each of you. Commissioner.
Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon. And thank y'all for being willing to join us on this workshop. Got a lot of information we want to share with you. But we're only as good as the questions that you ask. Again, there'll be many opportunities for us to stop and allow you to ask questions. There's a lot of information that's going to be shared. A lot of changes have occurred over the year, so we've got a lot of information to give to you. But don't hesitate to ask the questions, especially of the staff as each one of them present. They're good at what they do. They know the answers, and if they don't, they'll be able to get the answers for you. Please take the time to review everything that we have and slow us down if we're going too fast. With that, I'll turn it back over to Charlie. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton. So we're going to spend some time here today going through a ton of information for you. As you are aware, some of this is repetitive. There is a good bit of new information on here for you as well. Just want to make you aware that if you feel like you've heard the same thing over and over again, it's because we continue to have violations and or questions about the same thing over and over again. So want to make sure that we're very clear in what we're presenting to you, and you understand that it is all extremely important, because most of the old stuff is stuff that we continue to see problems with. This webinar is being recorded. It will be on our Rewind tab of our website. So if you feel like you want to go back and watch something that maybe you missed, or you maybe misheard, or you want to hear it again, you can do so through the Rewind tab. And if you don't hear this version of it, you hear one of the other 3 versions we offered. In addition, you can take that Rewind tab and show it to your entire coaching staff and or administrative team at your convenience. Throughout the meeting, if you have questions, be sure to type them into the Q&A chat box, and one of our league staff will be monitoring that to be able to help answer questions live. If we don't type them back in, we'll answer them live and in person. Now we'll move forward with our presentation and get you started. So first of all, medical information for you. Approved healthcare professionals, a return to play. These are the 5 persons who can return an athlete to play in the event there are signs and symptoms of a concussion. The MD, the DO, the AT, the NP, and the PA. Those are all our medical people who can return an athlete to play. This is not after they have been diagnosed. This is not who is diagnosing. This is who is determining during a contest if the athlete is showing signs and symptoms consistent with a concussion, and makes that decision on whether or not they feel like the athlete can continue. Of course, they all must be licensed in South Carolina. Other medical information for you are wet bulb globe thermometer. Remember, that is required. I want to make sure we encourage you to have that wet bulb globe thermometer reading done each day, and probably several times throughout the day. Don't just take that reading at 7 in the morning and then start your practices at 8 and assume that everything is still in line. You want to monitor that. Encourage you to keep track of that in conversation with a colleague from another state. They have a state who is in the middle of litigation right now. They had an athlete die due to heat illness, and the school was asked to submit their wet bulb globe thermometer readings and did not have any that they recorded. So certainly if you're taking the effort to go through reading it, you may want to keep a recording just to be able to show you were doing your due diligence in the event you find yourself in one of those situations. Remember, wet bulbs are mandatory. The Federation, through a foundation and grant this year, has donated 75 to member schools in our state. So 75 schools in our state were blessed with a free wet bulb globe thermometer through the NFHS Education Foundation. Physicals dated April 1st, 2022 or after to be valid. If I can give you a piece of advice on this, make sure that if you've got some 7th and 8th grade student athletes coming into your high school programs in the early winter before the spring, you make sure you point out to their parents that, hey, just because you just got one, that physical, while your doctor says it's good for a year, for league purposes, they're going to have to get an updated one again after April 1st for next year. Check with your athletic director and principals. Make sure you all have your emergency action plans for your facilities for each sport. Make sure your coaches understand what those emergency action plans are, and that your student athletes also have a basic understanding, as many of you have made a tremendous amount of upgrades or renovations to your facilities over the last few years. Make sure they're still accurate based on your facilities now, but most importantly, make sure those that are in those facilities understand what they are, especially your student athletes, because in some cases, there will be times your teams will practice where your coach may be the only adult on campus. And if something were to happen to that coach, you want your athletes there to have an idea of how to help get them emergency needs. Lastly, immersion tubs and other cooling devices. Remember, those are required for football. It's not just good enough to have the device. You need to have it ready to go with ice and water in them, ready to go in the event someone starts showing heat illness symptoms. Okay, we're going to present to you some changes to our rules and regulations here on the next few slides. But first of all, I want to help you understand how we get to those changes through the league procedures. And again, these are changes to the rules and regulations. Remember, changes to the Constitution and bylaws are made at the Legislative Assembly in March at the Principals and ADs Conference. A proposal needs to be written, and that would come to the league staff. It would come here to the league office. Proposal can be written by a school, a district, coaches association, or league staff could write a proposal to change the rules and regulations. Of course, it would be from a principal of a school, a superintendent of a district, the executive director or president of coaches association, or league staff. Once the proposal is written, the author needs to submit and get feedback from the classifications. And you would do this either in classification meetings or you can bring it to the Principals and ADs Conference in March and get your feedback there. Ideally, your feedback needs to come in the form of some kind of straw poll, which gives your executive committee member rep from your class an idea of how your class feels about it, which gives ultimately 5 reps that knowledge, and it gives the entire committee the feeling of the body of schools. If the proposal that is written deals with health and safety or has an impact to health and safety, then league staff will run that proposal through the medical aspects of sports committee. That committee is designed to provide feedback and medical advice and opinions to the commissioner to share with the executive committee. They're not there to write the proposal. They're not there to reauthor or to pass or to fail it. They are there to simply give us medical feedback. Once it's gone through the feedback process, the process for approval can move forward. Now, please understand, if you don't get feedback from the classifications, doesn't mean you can't move it forward, and it won't move forward, because it will. It's just going to make it really hard for anybody to take an educated vote on it moving forward. So you got a proposed change. It will move forward to the activities subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of the executive committee. Activities committee is made up of members of the executive committee. Activities can then take the proposal. They can modify it and change the language in any capacity they choose fit. They can recommend it as written, or they cannot recommend it. Regardless of what action they take on it, it moves to the executive committee. The executive committee then takes the activities committee action on this proposal and either approves the action, denies the action, or makes their own modification to it. So they can approve a recommendation. They can deny a recommendation. They can also take a not recommended and turn it back around and recommend it and make it a full rule. Once the executive committee makes their decision, they are the final decision on modifying, adopting, denying, or passing any proposed changes for that year. One of our first changes for this year are scrimmages, dealing with how many scrimmages schools and teams are allowed. One change this year is that varsity teams have the opportunity to have 3 scrimmages. Last year, your opportunity was for 2 scrimmages and 1 jamboree. However, schools can trade in their varsity jamboree and now have 3 full scrimmages. Sub-varsity teams can have 2 scrimmages. and drop their jamboree. So in other words, you can have one scrimmage and a jamboree, or you can have two scrimmages for sub-varsity teams. There is no opportunity to do multiple jamborees. If you've got a coach that brings you a schedule that has them going to two jamborees, you need to tell that coach they're only allowed to go to one jamboree. They can go to multiple scrimmages. If they do a jamboree, they can do, a varsity team could do two scrimmages, one jamboree. But there is no scenario where they can do two jamborees and one scrimmage. Our next change deals with open season. As many of you are aware, this is a time period where your coaches and athletes can work together. We do have that open period in June and July. And then we have various open seasons throughout our school year. The change this year essentially is an additional open period for all sports. We've gotten a lot of emails back and forth from coaches and other persons in our association wanting to know why the change and who made it. Well, this change was made through a handbook review committee, and this was probably the biggest area they tackled in terms of constant conversation. They were constantly having conversation about the open and closed season. Where they ended up is not where they started. And certainly they kind of weaved in and out throughout the process. And this is basically what they ended up with, which gives an additional period for all of our teams. As you can see, our fall sports, in addition to what they had in May, now have the entire month of March as an open period. Our winter sports, in addition to their fall period of September, they also have an additional all of April. And then spring sports have all of October, and then they would have January 1st through 25th. One important note is that there is no longer a cap on the number of days during these time periods. You have, for example, fall sports have 31 days in March, and they have additional 31 days in May. And that would be if they chose to work on Saturday and Sundays. That would give them a grand total of, by my math, 62 days. So there's 62 days of opportunities inside the school year for work. Some notes on this: competitive cheer is the only sport that can hold tryouts during the open season. They can hold those tryouts in May. We've had to deal with this past June some programs in May on other sports telling their athletes that it may be best if you did not come back, you would not make the team. Those are not calls coming from other schools or coaches. Those are calls coming from parents who say, I thought they couldn't make cuts. So you need to have conversation with your coaches during this period. If they want to give student athletes feedback on where they are skill-wise, of what they need to work on, that is certainly appropriate. But when they start telling them whether or not they would make the team if they had tryouts that day or not recommending them coming back, they are teetering on that edge of actually making cuts and making this a mandatory time period. So they want to steer away from that and give generic feedback to them as they can. Football has 10 days in full pads in May. This, of course, is after their 3 days in helmets only. Also to point out, in May, remember, May is the time period, according to the Constitution and bylaws, that sixth graders who will be seventh graders the following year can participate. That is only in May. That does not extend beyond May. Lacrosse goalies can wear full gear during open season at all times. That'd be both boys and girls lacrosse. And then boys lacrosse period they have in January, the first 5 days, they can be in helmets and gloves only. After that, they can put on the remaining full gear. And of course, also in the October period, boys lacrosse can wear helmets and gloves the entire time. Here are your closed season violations. These are in the rules and regulations and have been the rules and regulations for at least 4, if not 5 years now. I believe it is closer to 5. Won't bug you down by reading them all to you. However, make sure your coaches are aware of what these violation penalties are. Every time we have to deal with a closed season violation, the school says, man, that is a real stiff penalty. It's not something we're making up or coming up with. We're going exactly as it's written. And you can see what the violations are depending on how many days and or number of occurrences you've had. Now we're going to move to some questions to try to test your knowledge on the closed season. The first question is, during the closed season, teams can lift weights and condition. athletes, and this is provided these activities are not sport specifics, and all coaches can be present. So you can have all of your coaches from a sport present during lifting and conditioning activities, provided that it's not sport specific activities. And the answer to this is yes, this is true. You can essentially lift 51 weeks a year and condition 51 weeks a year. There is 1 week where you cannot lift or condition. That would be the dead week. So the question is, what does the dead week mean? This is the week around July 4th. This is the only time period that we refer to the word dead in our book. Everything else is closed. Dead means exactly what it says. It's dead. You think about it in terms of what can you do if you are dead? There's nothing you can do. You know, you don't breathe, you don't move, you don't talk, you don't meet, you don't go anywhere. There's nothing, no lifting, meetings, drills, athletes working camps, no voluntary workouts, etc. This would require that facilities be closed to all athletes and everyone takes a week off. The design of this several years ago was so that it forced schools and coaches to take a week off, and it gave their athletes a chance to have a week off set in the summer and to just be a student, and the coaches to just be people and to get away from their work. And what's happened is we've had about 3 to 4 years of this dead week now. We have coaches that are trying to find a little bit of wiggle room to get something out of that week still, but you can't do anything. We've got a lot of calls on, can we have a clinic for our youth in the area where our kids and coaches are working? And the answer is no. You got kids and coaches both there doing something together, you're going to be in violation of the dead week. Our next question is, during a closed season, athletes can use school facilities at any time, provided there is no coach present. This is during a closed season. Athletes can use your school facility at any time, provided there's no coach present. This is false. So school facilities during a closed season are off limits to your athletes. The only exception to this would be if your facilities are open to the public and it is a non-school day. So you've got a non-school day, Saturday or Sunday, and your facilities are open to the public. And again, school facilities are not able to be used during a closed season, and that's whether a coach is there or not. Okay. People ask, what does it mean to be closed to open to the public? That means me and my 35 best friends can come do whatever we want on your school facilities during that time period, provided that we don't destroy your property. And you can't come tell us to leave. Not many schools have that scenario set up. So if you're not sure, you may want to check with your district office or your board of your educational board in your local district to see if you actually are an open to the public facility. Next question is, during a closed season, your assistant softball coach owns their own hitting facility. Your softball athletes can go to this coach to hit, provided they pay them for the instruction they are receiving. Answer to this question, it is a false statement. This would be a violation. Your softball coach can work with any athletes who are not potentially eligible at your school. Remember, we get this question, especially in the sports of golf and tennis, where you have some adjunct coaches who for a living are golf or tennis pros, and they give lessons pretty much all day, every day, year round. And they are not able to work with your athletes during the closed season. This does not prevent them from doing their job. And I would certainly think that if their livelihood depends on being able to give lessons, then their ability to not give lessons to your athletes is not going to crush their livelihood. Hopefully they're not dependent only on your athletes that they coach for your sports season on making their ends meet. So giving lessons for pay is not allowed in the closed season. And then finally, remember the violations, again, we just went through those a little bit, are in the handbook. So please get those to your coaches when they are considering having a violation for the closed season. Next, we're going to talk about our outside teams. The change here, there was 2 changes. One, there were some changes made to the number of athletes allowed to be coached on an outside team. And the second, the biggest change really is the name of this rule. It used to be called the 75% rule, but now we are referring to it as the allowable starters rule. The reason it's the allowable starters rule is that every sport, with the exception of 3, will have the opportunity to work on an outside team with the number of athletes they would start a game with on their field or court. This is not the amount that would filter in and be considered a starter. This is actually on the very first play of the contest, how many are on the field or court. That's how many you start with. So football would start a kickoff that starts the game would have 11 people on one side of the field, or up to 11. Baseball and softball, yes, they have a DH. However, they start the game with 9 on the field. And then, of course, track, swim, and competitive cheer, those sports were capped at 15 athletes. And again, remember, this number applies to the number of players on an outside team that was listed on a school certificate of eligibility and dress for a varsity contest the previous season. And that would only apply if a coach from your school was coaching the outside team. If you've got a parent volunteer or a community volunteer and they do not coach at your school, you do not have to get involved with the allowable starters rule or worry about that impacting your outside team or your potential athletes' eligibility moving forward. This only applies if a coach from your school is coaching an outside team and has players on that outside team who dressed for a varsity contest during the previous season. First question that always comes up several times, it'll hit us here in the next few weeks as fall leagues and fall teams start. Can school facilities be used by an outside team? This says it right in the rules and regulations, but yes, they can. School facilities can be used by an outside team, provided that there is documentation that they are an outside team, that it's not representing the school, and that they've got a schedule that shows that they need to be practicing and preparing for. Please understand that if you're an outside team in basketball and your next game is March 31st, there's not a need to be practicing in August. The allowable starters rule only applies to coaching in games with the outside teams. In other words, practices do not count. So the question is that allowable starters only applies when I coach in games. I can practice them as much as I want. The answer to this is false. An outside team is an outside team, whether you're in practice or a contest. It does not differentiate between a practice or a contest. Remember, the coaches that coach for your school that are doing an outside team, they are tied to the number of allowable starters at all times, and that number cannot increase beyond what we just went over on the previous page. So if I'm doing baseball on an outside team, I have 9 players who dressed for a varsity game the previous year that can play on that outside team. If 3 of those kids get hurt, then I cannot go find 3 new players that played varsity for me to play on the outside team. Our next question or scenario for you is one that I intentionally designed to be about football, because football 7-on-7 is increasing in popularity. We're seeing a number of our schools and coaches who are taking part in outside 7-on-7 teams. Of course, the first sentence here, where it talks about a coach at your school runs a travel 7-on-7 organization, where it says 7-on-7, you can substitute any sport there and the same answer would apply to it. So you could put in volleyball, softball, baseball, basketball, whatever you wanted, and it all the scenario applies exactly the same. So this coach runs a travel 7-on-7. He has 6 total teams, 14, 15, 16, 2 17s, and an 18. They don't coach any team, but they do select and place athletes on certain teams throughout the organization. However, because they don't coach anybody in practice or in games, they don't have to follow the allowable starters rule. They don't have to worry about just having 11 in their organization because they don't coach anybody. The answer to this is false. If the coach has input or the selection of athletes on outside teams or places them on teams or gives feedback of where they need to play on teams, then they are limited to what the allowable starters rule is for that sport throughout the entire organization. So in this case, the coach at your school who runs a 7-on-7 organization, on those 6 teams he has, when he's placing athletes on those teams, he would only be able to place 11 athletes from the school he coaches at who dressed varsity contests the previous year on those outside teams. So he would take 11 players and he can disperse them amongst the 6 teams. But if he picked the 12th player that dressed for a varsity contest the previous year, he would actually be in violation, because we consider the interpretation is selecting them for teams, putting them on teams is the same thing as having input in practice and contest. Okay, last, I want to go through some violation stuff for you before I turn it over to Ms. Boozer. Initial inquiries from this office do not mean that you are guilty of a violation. Please understand that if I seek you out because information has been brought to us about a potential violation, that at the time of conversation or email, we are talking about potential violation. We're not saying you are guilty. The only time I would call you and say, hey, it looks like you're guilty would be if you send me something in writing saying, hey, we are guilty of committing this violation. That's the only time I would call and tell you that off the get. So what happens is we give you that inquiry, what gives you a chance as a school to respond to the allegations. Sometimes the information that comes to us is only about 65 to 80% accurate. There's a gap of information missing, which would make the difference in it being a violation or not. And of course, based on the information that you share back with us, we'll be able to determine whether or not there is a violation or not. So what happens is I reach out, initial inquiry. You're going to respond back to that initial inquiry. I'm going to ask you to respond in writing. And then from that point forward, I may have conversation with you, but I will have our basic conversation will be in writing. And it will be some letter writing back and forth, questions asked of you to answer. And I will again ask you to submit in writing. It's not an effort to try to trap you or to pull a got you on you or to let you dig your own hole. What I'm trying to do is get the most accurate information to determine whether or not we've got a violation or not. The reason we do it in writing is to make sure we don't have any communication errors. There's not going to be either one of us that gets amnesia or forgets what our conversation was. It's in writing, it's concrete, it's down. There's no miscommunication. This is what you wrote. This is what I asked. This is the information I have. Based on this information, there is a violation, or based on it, there is no violation. It is pretty clear. So that's why we do everything in writing, to make sure that we're very clear on both sides. Lastly, if you know about potential violation as a school, you need to report this information. That's what not only pertain to you, you know about a potential violation in your program or at your school, but potentially about a violation at another school. I can share with you that over the last few years, a number of our coaches and or administrators will say, well, I know this is going on at such and such, but I don't want to be the bad guy that hurts a kid. And while you may not be wanting to be a bad guy that hurts the kid at the school who you think the violation is occurring, you are the bad guy that's hurting kids who are at schools that are following the rules. And this violation is potentially helping this school be better than you or their opponent. So you may not be hurting them, but you are hurting others. So if you know it, report it. What we want to share with you on that is that don't share with us rumors and say, well, I've heard this, or I think this, or go by something you've heard, through the grapevine. If you've got information or you've got evidence, then send it to us. Let us look into it. There are times where you send it to us and it is accurate and there is a violation. There are times where you send it to us and there's a couple pieces missing to it, or the interpretation of what you've got versus what it really is a little bit off and it's not a violation. So we will look into it if a school sends it in. But what I do ask is that you call the other school first and you make them aware of what you know. And in some cases, they may be able to share, well, yeah, I see how it looks, but here's what the deal is. And you may say, okay, that makes total sense. Don't worry about it. There may be others where you feel extremely, sure that there is a violation, and you may tell them, look, I'm telling you now, so you can look into it, but I am going to let the league know at some point in the next few days. So you might want to get on this and let them know if you're in violation before I have to call them. And that way they at least have a heads up. But don't be the person that calls and says, please don't use our name. Please don't tell them we called. We just want you to know and leave us out. Well, we need you to either be okay being told that you were the one that shared it, or most importantly, just call the other school and say, look, we think this is going on. It really works well when that happens. And again, if you don't share what information you have, then nothing can be addressed. So we need you to share what you got, especially if it involves your school or somebody else. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Boozer to discuss our transfers.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Yes, I'm going to be covering transfers. And just before we get started, understand we could sit here and have an all afternoon presentation on transfers alone. I will cover some scenarios with you, but I know that will not address every transfer that we deal with. So if you have questions, if you have a specific question regarding a transfer for this upcoming school year, if you would email me or simply give me a call so we can discuss it, walk through it. Not all transfers are cut and dry. Some have a lot of moving pieces, so it is easier if we kind of go through those together. But anyway, any student who was not enrolled at your school or your feeder middle school during the entire previous year is considered a transfer student. So your coaches are going to be the first people that are interacting with students with their tryouts and their open season period. So it's important that they start trying to find out, was this student enrolled at our school this previous year, or were they at our middle school? So I encourage you to talk with your coaches so they can start getting that information and getting it to you so you can start the process to determine if that student is going to be eligible or not. To be eligible, the transfer must meet one of the criteria for eligible transfers stated in the bylaws, and this is Article 3, Section 10. I do encourage you to go and look at those bylaws regarding transfers. When you get there, you can see there's a lot of information that's covered in there, A through N. But again, you will go through it and still have questions regarding transfers, and can only just strongly encourage you to reach out to me here at the office and let me assist you when you have questions. All transfer forms must be completed prior to that student athlete competing. So again, you want to make sure the transfer forms are completed. Athletes who are not eligible, so if their forms are not completed and they're not eligible, they cannot play in a scrimmage, jamboree, or contest. Okay, so until you determine if that student is eligible, they cannot play in a scrimmage, jamboree, or contest. Dressing in uniform is considered participation. Now, the athletes can participate in practice, that is fine, but they cannot participate in a scrimmage, jamboree, or contest. All right, we have 2 requirements for all transfers. So first, you want to find out, is the student eligible to represent the school from which they are leaving? So check with the school in which they are leaving to make sure that they were eligible to represent them. And then second, did the student participate on an outside team in which a coach, including volunteer coaches, coached or had input into the selection of the outside team? So these are 2 requirements for all of our transfers. So any transfer that you have, you need to make sure they meet these 2 requirements. All right, I'm just going to go over some scenarios. And again, I cannot cover every scenario out there or every scenario that I deal with as they're all not the same. Sometimes they can be very unique and have a lot of moving pieces, as I stated earlier, but these are just some common ones that we deal with. And so I'm just going to go through these. A student who did not attend your school or your feeder middle school the entire previous school year, but now lives in your attendance zone and attends your school, does not need a transfer form because they now live in your zone. Well, we just covered this, and that would be false. This student is a transfer and needs transfer paperwork filled out. The only exception would be those 7th graders that are starting the first day of 7th grade at your feeder middle school. But any other student who was not with you the previous year or coming from your middle school, you would have to fill out transfer paperwork on them. A student is doing virtual school through an online private school. This student is eligible to participate where they are zoned to attend. So again, they're doing virtual school and they're doing it with an online private school. This is false, as state law only applies to those who are enrolled in a homeschool association or a charter school that does not offer the sport. So when you get transcripts from these students that are doing virtual schools, it's important to see, are they doing this virtual school through a homeschool association, or is it truly just an online private school? And we have come across several of those where the student is not in a homeschool association, but just working with an online private school to earn credits. That student would not be lost. State law only applies to those in the homeschool association or a charter school. All right, here we have a situation. Chip lives in the Beaufort High attendance zone, but attends a non-member school. After his 10th grade year, Chip decides to leave the non-member school and enroll at Battery Creek High School, same district as Beaufort. Battery Creek would use which of the following for the transfer? So Chip lives in the Beaufort High attendance zone. He attends a non-member school, but he wants to attend Battery Creek. So we have intra-district transfer, non-member to member transfer. With this situation, it is going to be intra-district because Chip does not live in the does not live in the Battery Creek attendance zone. So therefore it would not meet the non-member to member. And he would have to request an intra-district from Beaufort High School, even though he never attended there. So with this, intra-district will be the correct answer. Now, if Chip was leaving the non-member and going to Beaufort High, then it would be a non-member to member as he lives in their attendance zone. Student attended 9th grade at Spartanburg High while living in the Spartanburg attendance zone. She then left Spartanburg and moved with her family to Blythewood High School, which this was a bona fide change of address. Halfway through her 10th grade year, she left Blythewood and went to live with her aunt in Spartanburg. Mom and dad signed over legal guardianship to the aunt. The student enrolled at Spartanburg High School. 3 options for eligibility. So she started at Spartanburg in 9th grade, moved to Blythewood in 10th grade with a bona fide change of address, and then decided she wanted to go back to Spartanburg to live with the aunt. So would this be guardianship, return to last place of eligibility within 1 year, or not eligible? And with this information, the student is not going to be eligible, as the guardianship would not be recognized for eligibility purposes. And she is not returning to the last place of eligibility within 1 year, because when she moved to Blythewood with the family, then she had a bona fide change of address, and her eligibility therefore is at Blythewood High School. We have a student attended 9th and 10th grade at SC Virtual Online Charter School. The student is enrolling at the public school for the attendance area where they reside with their family to start their 11th grade year. Will this student be eligible to participate in athletics at the new school? So they are going to attend SC Virtual, which is an online charter school. And with this would be yes, as they live in the attendance area. This would be a non-member to member transfer. Sean is an 11th grader and attending a non-member private school in South Carolina and is playing basketball. At the end of first semester, his family makes a decision to enroll him at the public school for the attendance area where they reside. Will Sean be eligible to participate in athletics at the new school? So he's coming from a non-member private school. He's participated in basketball while he was there first semester. So with this, he would be eligible for any sport he had not participated in at the non-member school. Therefore, he is not eligible for basketball as he was participating in that sport first semester. He would also be ineligible for any other sport that he had participated in at the non-member school. So if there was a sport that the private school offered in the fall that we offer in the spring, and the student participated in it, they would not be eligible with the non-member to member. All right, and we get several questions about private schools. So that's why we're kind of covering some of these situations with private school. A local private school in your area does not offer baseball. Can students who attend that school and lives in your attendance zone play baseball at your school? Again, no, private school students cannot participate at the member school. State law does not provide an exception to private school students. So there is nothing that has been put in from state law that would allow private school students to participate at the school in which they are zoned to attend. Shannon is an 8th grader at Irmo Middle School and lives in Irmo's attendance zone. She participated in swim at Dutch Fork as a 7th grader, as the superintendent alternately assigned her. She will be able to swim again at Dutch Fork her 8th grade year, as she was alternately assigned as a 7th grader. All right, with districts that have multiple high schools in them, the superintendent does have the ability to alternately assign eligibility However, it would have to be done both years. So with this, the superintendent will have to assign the eligibility again for her 8th grade year to be eligible at Dutch Fork. And again, this is left at the district for the superintendent to alternately assign if a student knows that they are going to go to a certain high school within the district. They can request to be alternately assigned both their 7th and 8th grade year. So it'd have to be done each year. Adam lives in the West Florence High School attendance zone and attended there his 9th grade year. He played football and tennis. His 10th grade year, he is going to be homeschooled through a homeschool association for the first time. Is Adam eligible to participate in sports at West Florence? So he's going to be homeschooled, and he's going to be doing this through a homeschool association. And again, this falls under state law, and this requires a student to be homeschooled for at least 1 year prior to being eligible for athletics at the school that they are zoned to attend. Now, there was a proviso that did allow for immediate eligibility for homeschool students, and that was only good through the end of this past school year, the 21-22 school year. So again, with this, homeschool students must have been homeschooled for at least 1 year during their academic career prior to being eligible to participate in sports for the school in which they're zoned to attend. All right, foreign exchange. They must live in your attendance area, and they are only eligible for 1 year. Must be a member of an approved foreign exchange program. And last year we moved this foreign exchange form on Big Teams, which was Planet HS, but they're now known as Big Teams. So if you have a foreign exchange student, you will go on to Big Teams, you'll set up a student account for the student. Then you'll be able to enter the student's information in the foreign exchange form. Again, they must be a member of an approved foreign exchange program, and all of those will be listed. There will be an option there for you to check the one that they are a part of. If that foreign exchange program is not listed, then it is not one of the approved ones for a foreign exchange student. And then last, I'm just going to cover some helpful interpretations. And we've talked about transfer students. You just want to make sure that you are always checking those very closely. Many will not be eligible under the transfer rule. When you're dealing with transfer students, you're going to have to ask a lot of questions to the family members to make sure that you are getting all the details you need to determine the eligibility for that transfer student. So always make sure that you are checking them very closely. Never submit a student on a certificate of eligibility without having all necessary paperwork on file. So again, you want to make sure you have all your paperwork prior to putting them on that certificate of eligibility. Always check the records for the courses and units passed by a student. Certificates of eligibility, these must be submitted 7 days prior to the first contest in that sport. And with Big Teams, once you put in your regular season start date, they will have a little calendar there. It shows exactly when that eligibility should be submitted. And again, that's 7 days prior to your first contest. All varsity sports schedules must be filed in the South Carolina High School League office. We do use Arbiter for specific sports. So for this fall, that is football and volleyball. And then the other sports schedules that are not through Arbiter, those forms can be found in the athletic director's notebook. So for this fall, you should be able to find tennis, cross country, swim, golf, and you would just simply submit those in a typed form to our office to be filed. Never allow a student to practice without having a parent's permission form, physical examination form, and insurance coverage. Again, do not let these students practice without having this parent permission form, physical form, and insurance coverage. We get a lot of questions on, do we have to have this? And right there is your answer. A player has the same restrictions as a team on the number of games played. So if you have a player and they're bouncing between a varsity and JV level, please remember that they have the same restrictions as that team on a number of games played. So it doesn't matter if I play a game on the JV level, that's going to count towards my overall total. So just want to make sure that you are watching that if you have any athletes that are bouncing between a JV or varsity team. Anyone other than junior high or middle school players may move up or down. So there are some restrictions with those middle school players. That's dealing with advanced participation. So you want to make sure that you understand that sometimes with the middle school players, if they start up at the varsity level or the JV level, they can move down. But if those middle school players start at the middle school and then are moved up, they can no longer go back down to that middle school team. Teachers' children, they have the same restrictions as other students. So any teacher that's there at your school, their students have the same restrictions as all other students in your building. And then last, if you have any doubt, if you have any questions, always check with our office. That is what we're here for. So we encourage you to reach out and ask if you have any questions. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danny.
Thank you, Amy. I'm Daniel Brooks, Associate Commissioner, and I'm going to talk a little bit about requirements, expectations, and some tremendous opportunities that are available to you. First, coaching requirements. All coaches every year must take the following courses, and they take them through NFHSlearn.com. They are free, and that's the concussion course, heat acclimatization, sudden cardiac arrest, and protecting students from abuse. Those 4 courses are free on NFHSlearn.com. All coaches every 2 years should have their CPR and AED certification. So if they're up for renewal this year, make sure they get that done prior to the season. Non-district employees that are serving as head coaches must take the fundamentals of coaching course. That could be found also at NFHSlearn.com. And 2 recommended courses, the collapsed athlete, and of course, COVID-19. Sportsmanship/behavior. This is critical. And I'm talking about the adults here. You know, it takes no effort to be negative. We really got to make sure that our coaches take ownership of their programs. That's players, that's the coaching staff. We got to communicate our fans on what's acceptable and how to represent our schools. Making unsportsmanlike remarks toward opponents, it's not tolerated. It's not the culture you want. Spectators should be cheering for your team and not directing anything toward officials or the opponents, for that matter of fact. Making those negative or derogatory remarks toward officials, it's just not accepted. We're talking about the adults, and we need that model behavior from our adults. So belittle or degrading officials, that's not accepted. That's not the culture you want. That's not the way you want to be represented. Athletes' ejections. If an athlete is ejected, your coaches should notify you immediately. There's a school report that's expected to be submitted to our office the next day. What you don't want to do is get that call from me midday saying you had number 34 on your team ejected last night. Are you aware? And you said, no, I'm not aware. So make sure that your coaches are reporting any ejections that occurred, what transpired. If they think that the athlete was wrongfully ejected, you can submit video, upload video with those ejections, and that's found in your AD notebook. The number of games, minimum games that an athlete will be suspended is listed here based on the sport. If an athlete is suspended twice, if an athlete gets a second ejection in the same sport, it's a minimum of 2 weeks. And once we get to the playoff, they're suspended for the minimum of the next game.
And Danny, also remind them about the ejections that were not served.
If you had an athlete that was suspended from a spring sport this year, of course, that carries over to the fall. And that minimum will carry over to that fall sport that athlete is participating in. For example, if they're suspended from a baseball game and didn't have the opportunity to serve that suspension, it will carry over to the, and they play football in the fall, it will carry over as a 1-game suspension in the fall minimum of.
And that's for any ejection, so that, even if they didn't play a spring sport and they only played a fall sport, and that ejection, they still have to serve it if it was not served during this school year. So just want to make you all aware that ejections are carried over to the next sport that student athlete plays.
And thank you there, Amy. Also, if a coach is ejected, that report from the school must be submitted the next day. That coach must leave the facility immediately and not return. That coach cannot return until cleared by the high school league. If a coach is ejected, it's a minimum of 2-game suspension and a $300 fine. The suspension must occur at the level in which the ejection occurred. And if it happens to be the final game of the season, that carries a minimum of a $500 fine. We contribute to the profile of the SC graduate through our pillars of educational athletics. That's sportsmanship, which is one of our points of emphasis, coaches, athletes, and parents' education, health and wellness, service to the community, and leadership. I'm going to talk about several opportunities that's available through our pillars in just a few minutes here. The first, of course, is sportsmanship. We offer some tremendous awards to our schools. One of the awards there is the banner level, or our schools may earn the certificate level awards. There's also some pledges available online for our students and our coaches. But let me speak a little bit to the banner award. In order to earn one of our sportsmanship banners, we're asking that your athletes participate in our captain's course. They participate in our leadership summit. They participate in our Living Clean weeks that are listed here on your screen, with the first being September the 19th through 24th, the week of. That's the Living Clean week. We ask that you participate in community service projects and you go ejection free for the banner level. For our certificate level, we ask that you participate in our captain's course, our leadership summits, Living Clean week, as well as community service. And you no more than 3 ejections. Some opportunities that are available. I encourage, suggest, and highly recommend that all of your fall sport athletes get registered for our captain's course. Our captain's course is coming up for your captains of your fall sports on August 11th. It's about that course will take about an hour. It is power packed for your captains. I think it would be a tremendous benefit for your athletes within your school. Get them registered for that as soon as possible. Our summits, we offer a summit or a student services course every month. We have a leadership summit. We have sportsmanship summit, health and wellness, where the medical professionals will come out and share the latest and greatest in keeping our athletes healthy. We have a coaches, athletes, and parents summit that will center around the NCAA eligibility center and how to get recruited and things of that nature. We love to recognize our athletes that are doing things that are not performance-based through our Student of the Month program, where you can submit the outstanding things and contributions your athletes are making within your school, and we recognize them for those outstanding contributions. At this time, I will turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Charlie Winsky.
Thanks, Danny. Now I want to walk you through a few other pieces to help you if you are a new AD, or if you are a new principal and you need to get your Arbiter account, or you want to know where your Arbiter account is, or you need help with your Arbiter account. Please, all questions related to Arbiter, email Jan in our office. Any changes to games, whether it be a varsity game or a sub-varsity game? before you make any changes or notify anybody of changes, please notify our signers and make them aware so that they can make the changes first. Especially now, this year that you all are getting Arbiter Game for free. For those of you that have had Arbiter Game in the past, you've had to pay for it. Those who've never had Arbiter Game are saying, "What the heck is that?" Arbiter Game is Arbiter, but it's an upgraded version of Arbiter. It allows you to schedule much more than just your contest. It allows you to schedule. You can coordinate bus scheduling. You can coordinate your ticket takers, security, gatekeepers, workers, anybody that you pay and employ throughout a contest. The problem is that Arbiter Game allows you to cancel and postpone games up inside till the last minute. If you do that and do not notify your officials and assigner that this is happening prior to doing it, they may end up showing up at your place and you're going to owe them a game fee and mileage because you did not appropriately go about the right way to notify and allow them to know that it's been postponed or canceled. So we're asking you that if you have to make changes to your game, please notify your assigner. In the sports of varsity football, varsity basketball, your assigner is Jan here in our office. And it's a simple conversation, picking up the phone, calling her, but you're also going to have to notify your officials as well. Any other sport, you're going to notify your local assigner. So if it's varsity basketball or football, you're going to notify Jan as the assigner here in our office, in addition to all your officials. All of our other sports, you're going to notify your local director in your area. Arbiter training, there is some training dates for Arbiter Game. One was July 18th. The other is coming August 4th. So if you are interested in seeing Arbiter Game, I can tell you from what we have been told, your Arbiter will have a little bit different look to it when you open into it. This year, all the information you had in there should transfer over, but it should be a little different look. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Arbiter Game and how it works, they are doing another training on August the 4th. And if you've got a question about how to sign up or where, please contact Jan and she can get you pointed in the right directions. If you are offering boys volleyball, make sure that you can see boys volleyball as an option for your officials. If all you can see is girls volleyball and all the other sports you've typically had and do not see boys volleyball, there's nowhere in your Arbiter to be able to see a boys schedule, to input a boys schedule, or for somebody to know you've got boys contests. So contact Jan, let her know you need a boys volleyball as an option. Our booking fees for all sports are $50, and this includes all levels as well. There are a few exceptions to it. The first one would be swim. Swim is a $25 booking fee. And then, of course, varsity football and varsity basketball booking fee. You are already paying those in through your league dues. All other booking fees would be $50, and that would be regardless of the level you've got. That would be per team, per sport. So remember, booking fees do not hold you hostage to how many or how few. It's $50, whether it's 1 or it's 16 regular season home games. Your assigner is owed $50. You should be getting an email or a letter from your local assigner for each sport you've got. You should get one prior to your season starting that should outline their communication procedure and their thoughts, and how to pay their booking fee and who to write the check to or make payment to. Please try to take care of this in a timely manner. We are still cleaning up some booking fees for some schools from last fall. And we've quite honestly got some assigners who this fall don't really want to assign for those schools because they're not paying them in a timely manner to do the job that they are doing. So $50, get that paid. Please be on top of this. Same time, I want to remind you gently, please take care of your officials' payments in a timely manner. We had a number of situations last year where we were 6 to 8 months behind paying officials for a contest. And that's not a situation that we need our schools to be in. We need you to pay these folks, in a timely manner. And on top of that, you don't have the right to go in and make changes to their payments. The system is set up to reflect the game fee and the mileage traveled and the rate for the mileage travel. If you notice something's wrong or something's not right and you don't want to pay it, please make us aware so that we can go through and get it right. We did have a situation, I think, a couple years ago where, for whatever reason, the game fee was well over $1,000. That should never be the case for one person. being paid that. Please don't play those in errors. If you see something's wrong or think something's wrong, just pick up the phone, call Jan, let her look into it and make sure that what we've got is accurate. But please do not take it upon yourself to set what you think it should have been and just pay that, because it creates us some problems. Of course, payments go to those individual directors. New for this year, Commissioner Singleton sent this out back earlier in the summer, as was approved by the executive committee, is a $25 fee is paid to the local assigner per scrimmage. And this money goes to not just to, you're going to make the check to the local assigner because we needed one place for you to get it to, but that local assigner and district can use that money as they see fit. They can use it for training. Some are going to use it to buy new officials some uniform and equipment. Others are going to use it to offset travel costs for scrimmages for their officials, with gas being still so high right now. So a lot of them are using it for various reasons. This is not a fee for the scrimmage. This is a fee that goes to that district for them providing you people to work that scrimmage for free. Remember, they're not getting paid mileage and or a game fee when they come out there and do a scrimmage. So please keep that in mind. And this is a small gesture of appreciation per scrimmage. That $25 does not matter how many officials you have show up. It'd be 1 or 50. It's just one $25 fee every time you host a scrimmage. Our rule clinics for this year, of course, we had the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association in Greenville this past week. We held our rule clinics for all of our sports up there, except for lacrosse, which the rules are not complete yet. So we'll have all of our fall and winter sports clinics are online at Planet HS. And as Amy mentioned earlier, of course, Planet HS is big teams now. They have transitioned over completely. So make sure your fall sport coaches, those fall clinics went active on Friday, and they will remain active and through the 14th of August. And then tell your spring sport coaches that they will go online the 2nd of January and run through January the 31st. So no excuse. Remember, those are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the time period that it's open. There's no excuse. Most of our rule clinics are running anywhere from about 40 minutes to an hour. So if they can just stop and come back or take their time to get it done, they can certainly do it on their own schedule online. Your winter sports clinics are in October. They will be face-to-face. You see here in front of you the locations for those clinics, the dates and the times for all of them. All of them are at 6 p.m., which should make it consistent so nobody can mess up the time. Of course, October 11th will be at Malden High School in the upstate. That'll be basketball and wrestling. The same night, both will be starting at 6 o'clock at different rooms in the facility. The 12th of October will be at Stall High School, just outside of Charleston. October 17th will be at West Florence in the PD area. And then October 18th at the league office will be basketball only. And then October 19th will be at the league office wrestling only. So make sure your wrestling coach knows if they miss, your basketball coaches know that if they miss everything through October the 18th and they try to come on October 19th because they just think they'll go over it, they will not get credit for being at a basketball rules meeting. All those will be at 6. And of course, these locations are strategically picked because essentially just about from every one of these locations, you can get to about anywhere within reason, maybe a few exceptions in South Carolina, within about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. There are, of course, some rare exceptions, but for the most part, it's not much further than an hour drive if you come to one of these. So that's why we picked those. They're all easy access points right on and off the interstate as well. So those are your clinic dates. And remember, ADs and principals can come in place of a head coach. So if you have a head coach that did not do their winter clinic meeting in Greenville and they live in Myrtle Beach and just can't make West Florence, certainly you as a principal or AD could come in their place and get that checked off your box. Okay, officiating, our pool of officials is not increasing. Found out this past weekend that we've got well over 100 new or just over 100 new football officials, either new or transferred. I think we got a little over 24 transferred, maybe 26 transferred from other states, and the rest of them are brand new to the sport of football. However, our registration numbers are down about 10 officials. So while we got over 100 new, that means we lost somewhere in the neighborhood of just over 110 from last year who officiated and did not come back. So we're while we are getting a lot of new ones, our potential pool is not increasing. We're not growing in large numbers like we really would like to be. Remember and keep in mind that our sub-varsity level is where our new officials are getting all their experience. We do not throw them to the wolves on a varsity game as their first ever assignment. We try to ease them into the process. They will make mistakes at the sub-varsity level. Of course, we do have veteran officials doing sub-varsity sports as well in all of our sports. They're there, number one, because they want to work. They love to work. Number two, they're there to help train these newer, younger officials. And number three, we need people to work those games, and they're happy to help out. So there will be some veteran officials mixed in, but know that there are times where there are some brand new ones down there, and they will make mistakes, and we have to understand that and grow with it and learn. Too often or not, how our officials are being treated, that's pretty much the reason why they're staying or not staying. In most cases, it's what's the reason they're leaving. And of course, we want to always treat them with respect. And of course, our officials are taught this is a two-way street. They should give the respect as much as demand the respect. With this, I want to take a moment to kind of piggyback on what Danny mentioned earlier with our behavior. Quite frankly, behavior really, we've just got to get our behavior better in all of our contests, but the behavior of our adults and the behavior of our students. Unfortunately, most of the issues that we've had in the last year or so has not been about student behavior as much as it's been about adult behavior, both coaches and spectators. We've had, just to be very frank with you, in the sports of basketball, lacrosse, and soccer, we've had a number of issues over the last few years where our spectator behavior is just, it's just atrocious. To be honest, it's heading down the wrong road, as they used to say years ago in school. It's off the chain. And that's probably just putting it in a very nice manner. It's really rough, and it's embarrassing, to be honest with you, to have to deal with it on our end, and for you to have to deal with it. And we've had way too many situations in basketball, especially, where we've had to just stop the contest due to the way our spectators are behaving. And it's not stuff that we can find online, and it's just isolated to other parts of the country. And watch this, it's happening in our state. It's happening in our membership, in our backyard. And we've got to clean it up. And that falls on you as an administrator. And we've got to get a step ahead of the officials. There should not be a situation outside of a comment made by a fan that you just were not in the position to hear, or something happened that you just were not in the position to see, that the official has to stop the game and ask for a fan to be addressed. You need to get ahead of that. You need to address it before it happens. Doesn't need to be a situation where, yeah, we've had issue with this fan before. You don't have to let them keep coming back, and you don't have to keep taking it from them. So we expect you to step up and be an administrator and be the leader, and don't let these fans get out of control, because unfortunately we're having to stop soccer matches. We're having to dismiss way too many folks. Lacrosse is getting out of hand in terms of the way the spectators are yelling and treating officials, and certainly treating each other. And basketball, certainly, I think we had a handful of games last year stopped at some point. In a couple cases, gyms emptied and spectators, or gyms or games made up in a later date without any spectators. We don't want that to be the case. We want everybody to come enjoy, and the athletes to enjoy the experience of playing in front of people. So please step up. And again, we know, I've been in your shoes. I know you want to do your job, but also know you want to be a fan. You want to support those kids, and you want to watch the contest because you have a love of sports. But there are times where, unfortunately, you don't get to be a fan. You've got to be an administrator, and you set that tone at home for your folks. When they go on the road, hopefully they'll carry that reputation with them as well. So please get ahead of this thing and take care of the way our spectators are behaving. As we move into the next slide, officiating, we'll continue a little bit on it. They're going to make some bad calls. Remember, they're there to be the most impartial, bipartisan group that you could possibly have. In some cases, they're going to have a bad night. But please understand that regardless of what you expected of them, in most all cases with our officials, their standards for what they have for themselves are higher than any standard you would have for them. There are a few that probably don't care either way. But for the most part, many of them, their standard for themselves, they want to do a great job. Most of the officials that I've worked with that have had major issues, in a lot of cases, are just distraught that they messed something up. If there is a situation where an official becomes unprofessional, or if they just are blatantly missing calls, or just missing calls in your opinion, there is a professional way to handle this. If it's football or basketball at the varsity level, please send those reports and clips to me. and make me aware as soon as possible. Certainly if it's a varsity football game on a Friday night, don't wait till the following Thursday morning and say, oh yeah, by the way. Certainly don't wait till week 7 and say, look, this has happened to us 3 times this year. I can't address anything I don't know about. So get it to me as fast as we can so we can look into it and address it. Any other sport, you want to get that to your local assigner, but also copy the commissioner in this office who is in charge of that sport as well, so that we can look into it. Usually our assigners are pretty well in tune with what's going on and we'll already have an idea. But if it's an unprofessional behavior situation, we need to address it as soon as possible. If you don't get it to us in a timely manner, we can't address it. In some cases, they have an opportunity to work other games inside of the incident and when we're able to address it. And that makes it very challenging on our end to have to address it when the official says, well, I don't understand why you're addressing it now because I've already worked 3 more games. Just address them when it comes up. So the faster you get it to us, the better. Finally on this, please do not cut or paste social media on social media clips of calls that officials missed or what they think they missed. I can tell you, I've seen this on and off a couple of times in the last few years. 8 out of 10 times, the person who's posting it does not know the federation rule. They may know the rule they've heard on TV for the NFL or the NBA or college sports, but they don't necessarily know the high school rule. So in most cases, they're incorrect as to what they're posting. In some cases, all they've done is take a snapshot or blown up a picture on the sideline and said, look, the foot wasn't in. We don't have the total picture of it. Everybody jumps on it. And of course, you engulf the masses in negativity at that point in time. And of course, when you find out you're wrong, or when the parents find out they're wrong, nobody ever offers a public apology on social media when they were wrong. So please help us keep people from refraining from posting these things. If you know them or they're people or parents in your program, just tell them to get it down. It's not helping anybody. It's not making the call get better. It's not making the official better. And it's certainly bringing a positive light to officiating. A few other reminders for you. Be mindful of what's being posted on social media, not only by your coaches and your players, but also keep in mind your school social media groups. If you've got a school account that's putting your school out there in a positive light, whether it be school itself or your athletic program, you don't get to fall on the excuse of, well, we had a student running that, so they didn't know. If you're putting somebody else besides an adult in charge, or even if you're putting another adult in charge, you need to make sure they understand what is and isn't acceptable to post on social media. And you're not going to be given the green light or a pass because you chose to put a 17-year-old on your school social media account and they just put some inappropriate things out there. We're going to hold you to the same standard if it's representing your school. If it's not representing your school, you need to make sure they don't have any attachment to your school on there at all, other than the fact that that's where they maybe go to high school. Also be mindful of who's coming in and around your teams at all times. This would include in your locker rooms. You'll be amazed at the number of these. I call them the fly-by-nights, but they're not really fly-by-nights because most of them are very dedicated to what they do. But these digital media people that just will follow your groups around with cameras in their hands and some other equipment. And, they're very good at just being real slippery and sliding in wherever your kids and teams are going. And they look like they belong. You feel like they belong, and you think they're doing something good until they post that one thing that portrays you, your athletes, your coaches, or your program in a negative light. In many cases, they're not accountable to anybody. And in most cases, they're trying to build their reputation and their line of work and portfolio up to get another job. So be mindful of who's coming around and what they're doing around your athletes. Games may need to be adjusted due to lack of officials. Of course, we've talked about that a number of years, and that would be all sports. Again, if we let you know or the director lets you know, you're going to have to move or adjust your game. Without officials, it's really not a negotiation at that point in time. It's either you're going to do this or you're not playing when you originally have it scheduled. Either way, you're not playing when you originally have it scheduled. Game times. Remember, early games make it very difficult on getting officials. If I had the biggest complaint from our directors in the sports that I deal with and some of the other sports that I've listened to, it's the inability to get officials to 4 o'clock, 4:30, and 5 o'clock start times for sub-varsity. It's just really, really challenging on our signers. Number one, most of our officials work for a living. They work till 4 or 5 o'clock. So a 4 or 5 or 4:30 start time is a real challenge. Understand, we get that you want to get home as early as possible on those sub-varsity nights, but at the same time, you want to have officials and you want to have the biggest selection of officials as well. And then finally, fall sports, please keep an eye on your preseason practice guidelines. That would be on our website under our health and safety tab. And please just keep an eye on that and make sure that, you know, all of your fall sports programs are going through that preseason practice guideline. And that's not just limited to football. There are two separate ones. One's football specific, but we do have that preseason guideline for all of our fall sports, and please review it. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Keith Warren, who will talk you through our some digital media and some ordering things we have now online.
Thank you, Charlie. Let me share my screen here. I'm going to show you a little bit about the website. I'm going to go over how to order rules books, and we're going to do the directory and Dragonfly. First thing I want you to notice is on our website at the top, there's a blue bar and there's a menu here with things that you might access frequently. Forms is one of those. We reworked that this summer so that some of the forms that were on the 80 notebook are now in the forms section. So you don't want to take a look there. The directory is here. We're going to go over that in just a minute. Like I just mentioned, there's the 80 notebook. You're going to spend a lot of time there. Charlie mentioned earlier that this will be available on the rewind section. This webinar, you will be able to access it from this menu. And we've recently added a help menu, and we'll keep adding to that as we go along. We'll put items up there that will help you with items that we have for you to do, like the directory and sanctioning and things like that. So let's take a look at how do you order a rule book. And on our website, down here, there's a rule book section, and you can click on that, and it's going to open up this page, and it'll give you some information about how this works. It's also going to give you a link, and if you click on this link, it's going to open up our Shopify page. You can also scan the QR code if you're on a mobile device, and that'll take you right there to it. So this is what you'll see when you go there. We have rules books, we have case books, diagrams, we have lineup cards, score books, a variety of things here for all the sports. You can just click on them and put in the quantities you want, and we can ship those to you, or you can pick them up at the office. Next thing I want to go over is the directory. So again, on our website, on the directory link here, if you click that, it will open up a search menu, and you can search for any school in our state. So I'll put in the high school league here, and this is what you will get when you search. And one of those items is the directory administrator, and it's down here at the bottom. This is the person at your school who created your school on the directory, and they have access to make modifications to that. Now that person may leave, and or maybe you want more than one person having access, and we can accommodate that either way it goes. Just let me know. I need to know your school name and who needs access. They'll need to create an account on our directory, and then I can give them access to it. Once you click on, you find the school you want to search, you go to more details, and this is going to give you not only information about the school itself. We have social media things here, which is really helps Tammy out. So we'd like you to include that information as well. But it has your staff at the bottom. And you'll notice for every staff member, we have an email address. Whenever you enter your staff, we also have fields for phone numbers. So if you would put the cell phone number in there as well, it won't be on the public page. Only the staff has access to that. And if we're out on the road and we need to contact you, that's a really big help for us. So we promise that the public won't get it. Only our staff will have access to it. Now, one thing about this, when you enter your staff, and I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll come here and actually go through this real quick. So this is the link, and we sent this out in documentation about how this works. This is the link you'll go to manage it. You won't see this link on the website per se. If you don't have an account, you can click the sign up and create an account. Now, once you do that, if your school already exists, don't create another one. That'll make a duplicate. We're trying to make that to where it will only allow one, but for the time being, it will allow duplicates. So we need to be careful of that. So once you create the account, you can sign in. And so at the very top, this is a listing of all the schools that I created. So if I created it, it's going to show up in this top part. But if you want access to a school that's already created, you'll be down here in the school groups. So we can put as many here as you like. If you're a district level and you want access to all of your schools, no problem, we can give you access. From here, you can add a staff member and you can edit the school. So maybe the school changed their domain name and your email addresses are going to change, or maybe you have a new facility and you're going to change the address. That's where you would edit the school. To edit a staff member, this is where you're going to add a staff, delete a staff, or change. Maybe the staff is changing roles at your school. And so that's where you would do that. The same thing works here at the bottom. If it's a school group, same access, it's just you access it through a different area. And perhaps maybe you have to add a school. Your school wasn't on there to begin with. Someone last year didn't create that for you. So you can come here and create that, but make sure, first of all, it doesn't exist. Amy, do you have any questions about that?
No, there are not any questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move along to Dragonfly. Dragonfly is how we handle our digital passes, the league pass. So if you had an account last year, even if you were at a different school, you don't have to create a new account. If you're going to change schools, what you would do would be to click on your name at the bottom when you log in and go to My Info. And at the very top of the screen, you see connect to a school or association. So you'll just click on this and go through the widgets there and pick your new school, and you will be linked to that school. You need to be approved by an administrator at that school level to actually give you access to the school, but that's the process you will go to. You can also remove yourself from a school. So from this page, you're going to click on the little 3 white dots in the blue box, and you'll see I can remove myself or I can change roles. Now, there's not much I can do to change roles because I'm not an administrator here. But if you're an administrator, you can click on someone's name and you can change their roles for them. Or you can actually remove a staff member if you know they're leaving. But to get your pass, so when you log in, you'll be on the Today page. And you'll see here, I've already requested a pass and have been approved. If after I request it, it's going to have a watermark on it saying that it's pending. So 2 things have to happen. The school must approve that, and then the league must approve it. So here's that approval process. Well, let's go through this first. So you're going to request the card if you haven't already requested it. And you're going to fill out the form. There's ask a few questions here. You're going to pick which pass you want. So I'm going to pick the league pass. It's going to ask you some questions. You answer those. You upload your image, your photo, and make sure it's a clear photo and keep it tightly cropped to your head. Keep in mind, this is a rather small pass, so you need the image to be as large as possible where they can see you when you go to an event. And then you'll click Get My Card. And what that does is that sends it to your school administrator, and they can approve or reject it. So you'll see here, I didn't complete it, but this is what would happen when you went through it. It's going to say pending. Now, if it says not yet submitted, that means you didn't click the button at the bottom that says Get My Card. So we see that sometimes where they think they've applied for it, but they didn't finish it. So they've got to hit submit. And then it'll come here. So if you're an administrator, but here's how you're going to approve it. So you'll have cards and events on the left nav bar, and you'll click that. And you're going to see all the cards in your school that have been submitted. And you can click on the checkbox to the left of their name. And because I've already approved this one, but to the approve is dimmed out. So all I can do at this point is reject it if I want to. And if you reject one, it will not delete their account, but it will delete the pass off of their mobile device. So if you had multiples here that you wanted to approve, you could click on more than one at one time and then hit approve. And it will cycle through all of those and approve them as it goes. So you're also going to need the Dragonfly app on your mobile device. It works on iOS or Android, and you can get those in the App Store for either of those devices. They have a new app It's search for Dragonfly and you will see that there is a coach's app. I highly recommend you download that and start using it. At some point, the old app will not work anymore, but currently they both work. But the new app has a really good feature on it for the cards. They call them cards, our league pass. So you can actually, if you already have an account in Dragonfly, you can log in on the app and you can request the pass directly on the app. And if you don't have a photo, this is really handy because you can just take the picture with your cell and add it to the request right there on the device. So I recommend you do that. And you're going to have it anyway when you go to an event and show that you have a card. Now, if you're at the school and you're at the pass gate and you're monitoring people coming in with their pass, it's a really nice feature on this app where you can validate the card. If you turn the device sideways so that's horizontal, you can swipe across the pass and it will ask you to validate it. And this is an assurance that it's not a screenshot that someone took. So they can modify a screenshot. It might not be valid, but if you click that and it doesn't ask you to validate, then it's probably a problem. So that's just one more feature to try to make this a better system. Amy, do you have any questions about the card?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Good afternoon,
Cindy.
folks.
Cindy, I'm gonna pause you 1 second because I do have a question
Okay.
for Keith that did come in.
Okay.
All right, so this was a question: if a coach has quit or is removed during the season, can we use the reject button to turn off that coach's pass?
You absolutely can. That will delete the pass from their mobile device.
Okay, and then Cindy, I'll let you address this one. It is dealing with Dragonfly, but it's asking about what is the cost schools pay for each coach that we accept in Dragonfly.
I'm sorry, Amy, can you repeat that one?
Yes, what is the cost schools pay for each coach that we accept in Dragonfly?
Okay. Let me start with that one. So every school gets, every high school gets one pass for every varsity sport offered. Okay, so if you offer 20 sports that school year, you get 20 free passes, plus you get one for your principal, one for your athletic director. Any pass requested over that allotment incurs a $25 charge. So typically your one varsity sport's going to be your head coach. And then again, one for the AD, one for the principal. Anything over that has a $25 charge. We invoice at the end of the year. So after spring season is almost complete and everybody's gotten their eligibility in, and we know how many sports that school is Offered, then we'll send out an invoice for the passes over that requested amount. I think that answered it, hopefully. Any other questions about that?
That was it. Thank you. And we'll get you.
Okay. All right, just a few more things to go over, folks. First of all, welcome back to the start of a new year. Want to talk to you briefly about sanctioning, and I want to start with something that I keep forgetting to say, which is make sure if your school has submitted a sanction application and you have something coming up soon, a lot of football jamborees going on out there, check our website to make sure your event has been approved. So go to the website, the AD Notebook. If you scroll down, you'll see the sanctioning section. Look for the approved tournaments, jamborees, and check the list to make sure your school's on that list. If you don't see your jamboree there, that means it hasn't been approved by our office. So that could mean that either I'm missing something, that it could be that your principal hasn't signed it. It could be that I'm missing some paperwork, that you never hit the submit button. I am trying to daily go through those sanction applications and just check to see the ones that are coming up soon and sending reminders. So check your spam to make sure that you're not getting a reminder from our office. From me, it'll say missing sanctioning information or missing information, something like that, to make sure that if your event's not posted, then it hasn't been approved. So for everything coming up in the next couple of weeks, double check those things for me. Remember that any event outside of your regular season competition has to be approved by our office. So that's your tournaments, your jamborees, showcases, invitationals. All of those things need to get approval from our office. In the past, we had an application for South Carolina High School League member schools. We had a border state application. Those have been consolidated into one digital application. So that link that you see on your screen is the digital link that takes you to our app, which allows you to type everything in. It is seamless, means you don't have to print paper, walk it to the principal, get his signature, take it back to the scanner and scan it to me. You just complete the application. Once you hit the submit button, it automatically emails your principal for his signature. It's a digital signature. Once he hits submit, it automatically comes back to me. And then I can review the application. So again, this link replaces both the South Carolina High School League member-only application and the border state application. Anything that has schools from across the country, Virginia, Florida, Tennessee, wherever, those still require NFHS sanctioning. You still have to go to their website to get that done. Make sure that you get your applications in at least 30 days before the event. That gives me time to review it, make sure I have everything I need. Otherwise, you incur a $25 late fee for submitting your applications. Another thing I keep forgetting to remind everybody is there is no fee for Jamboree applications. There is a fee for tournaments, showcases, invitationals, but your football Jamboree applications, all those things, basketball Jamborees that come in, you do not have to submit a sanction fee for those things. Also be reminded that we no longer collect money for your Jamborees. So you negotiate what you share with the other schools. Don't send any of that Jamboree money to us. Again, it is a seamless application, or at least we're hoping that it is. It makes the process much easier for you all, much easier for me. Make sure that as you fill it out, if your schools are from SCISA and or North Carolina, Georgia, or any other association, you fill out that information. I don't necessarily have to have their mailing address, but I definitely need to know the association and the contacts so that I can make sure that they get emailed the application so they can approve it. That's, again, we're not printing and scanning stuff over. I just hit a button, it sends it straight to Georgia, North Carolina, they hit approve and it comes right back to me. If you have a question about the application, please feel free to email me or just call me. Then I can walk you through. The other thing that I forgot to remind folks this morning is that don't submit a duplicate application. So if you think you submitted one or you did submit one and you feel like you left something off, you just want to redo the application, that just backlogs the system. I end up with a lot of applications that are just sitting there. There is a process to edit your application. And I can walk you through that if you want to give me a call, and I can tell you how to go in, edit the application, add more teams, change things if you need to. But please don't submit a duplicate application. Any questions about sanctioning, Amy?
No questions.
Again, please, 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 if you've submitted an application, check our website, send me an email and say, hey, I don't see that event approved there. Can you tell me what's going on so I can check to see what the issue is, why it hasn't been approved, particularly for everything coming up in August as we get started with the year. Okay, finally, I want to talk to you about your financial forms. I briefly mentioned the Jamboree fee payments that don't come to us anymore. Financial forms are all on our website. For playoffs, for Jamborees, there is a form that you have to complete. If your school advances to the first, second, third round of playoffs, there's a financial form that is due to our office within 2 weeks after the form is, after the event. Make sure that you send the participating school a copy of the financial form. I get emails occasionally from schools that ask me if I have a copy because they didn't get anything, or they may get a check and they haven't gotten a form. So just make sure that when you complete those forms, you're sending a copy to the school and a copy to our office. There is no money due to our office in the early rounds of the playoffs. We do not collect money until the semifinals of basketball and the finals in all other sports. So while the form is due to us, you don't have to send us any money. That the share goes to the other school. And again, even if no money is due, if you didn't make any money on the event, you still need to send us that financial form. We tried to make those forms a little bit easier. All the school has to do is fill out the ticket count and list their expenses. It automatically computes everything else. So the school share, the participating school share, it divides all that up for you. So all you have to do is put in the ticket count and your expenses. That is done in Excel. It's a lot easier than printing the form and trying to make the calculations yourself. Again, if there are any questions about the financial forms, call me. I will be happy to walk you through it or explain what's on the forms. I think that sometimes is a lot easier than sitting there for a couple hours or a couple days trying to figure out what you're supposed to do with it. And again, those are all on the AD notebook on our website. So if you click on forms on the website, scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a section that says financial forms. And they're actually separated by fall, winter, spring sports. So you can grab the form that you need, complete it. Finally, I got one other thing that I want to mention is that membership dues invoices are out. Everybody should have received them. If you have not received your invoice for membership dues for the 2023 year, please let me know. I may have an email address that's incorrect or something, but everyone by now should have received their invoices for membership dues and insurance. Any questions?
I think you're good.
Okay. I will turn it over to Tammy.
All right, good afternoon, South Carolina. Glad to have you here, and I will try to make this very efficient and so we can get through it quickly, but also efficiently. I'm going to screen share at this moment so we can get to some of my information. All right, let's see. And earlier, Charlie done a great job of stressing the importance of social media with your schools and your students and staff. I am charged with the high school league social media accounts, and we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have a YouTube channel and a LinkedIn page. So I am the one that is posting those things, but also I get the pleasure of seeing things that your students and your staff tag us on, which I really appreciate. I just want to stress a couple of things about that. Keith also mentioned the directory. That is a super important aspect of getting your year off to the right start. When you go to the link to do your directory information, you also have the opportunity to put your school's official platforms, social media platforms. So I'm just asking that you take the time to put your school's official accounts, such as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I do believe those are available there. The reason why that's important, whenever I'm tagging your school, a lot of times some of the schools have multiple pages, and it could be students starting pages under your name, your booster club, your band, whoever. So if you would take the time when you put your information in that directory, go ahead and do the added step of putting your social media, the official pages that you are responsible for. Just go ahead and type those in, and that way, whenever I'm tagging you, I check that directory to tag you with the right page. So that's one thing, to make sure that directory is updated. And while you're tagging us on those posts, make sure that you're actually following our pages, and go ahead and share our pages. Share our pages on your pages. That way your fans are all, also become our fans. Encourage them to also connect with us on all social media platforms. There's no such thing as too much information and accurate information. There are some fraudulent high school league pages out, whether it's Facebook, Twitter. This year, we did see a rise in fraudulent, not only high school league pages, but also some of the broadcast companies are being mimicked. Always double check if there's a question in your mind when it deals with money or pages that are asking for credit card numbers and so forth. Sometimes they'll put SCHSL network or something that seems official, but it's not. So I ask that you make sure that you double check our pages. And with that, for instance, this is our Instagram. It is SCHSL Sports, and our Twitter is just at SCHSL, and our Facebook is South Carolina High School League. So I just ask that, if you have a question, contact me or contact someone here, but those links are on all of our platforms as well as Tues News. Moving on to Tues News, I'm going to go pull that up as well. That is put out on Tuesdays, of course, by the end of the day. And also, if you do not get your Tues News in your email, it's always on our website under communication. So right here, and again, we always have our official links to our social media at the bottom corner. of each Tuesday news. So if you have a question or there's a doubt, you can always check right here and it links you to the High School League's official pages. But again, these are sent to superintendents, principals, and ADs assistants, administrative assistants every Tuesday evening. And almost immediately they're placed on the website as well. So if you didn't get one and happen to really need to see something or something from the previous weeks, just go to our website. It's right here. We keep a log of all of them all year long. So that's very important. And if you're not receiving those emails, that means your directory is not updated. So again, revert back to that directory, how important it is. And good news, there's also, if you go under our communication link here, we have a link for good news. And a lot of times that stories that I find on social media or with our TV stations and newspapers and so forth, all of these things just sporadic, we throw them up there as soon as we see something. So we ask that if you do have someone on staff, whether it be yourself or someone that's a constant cheerleader for your athletic programs, kind of anoint them as the school athletic good news ambassador. Put them in contact with me, and that's just something that they can do to share the information, the good news that's going on in your school and athletic program. And if they forward that to me via email or on our social media accounts, that's just one more step that makes it easier for both of us to share the positive things going on around our membership. I also ask that this individual and you as well, keep in mind all of the awards that we have throughout the year. We have that link on here, but there's something going on each month, whether it's Student of the Month, the NFHS, has awards throughout the year, to include. We've been very fortunate to have several winners, whether it be Hall of Fame or Heart of the Arts or Spirit of Sport. Just constantly there's things going on to promote those positive aspects of your athletic program, whether it be your students or a staff member. So keep that in mind and just keep pushing that good news. Danny, I believe, already spoke to you about community service and Living Clean. We do have one of those, a Living Clean week each season. So just be on the lookout for our fall dates. That will be posted in this week's Tuesday News, as a matter of fact. And let's see, and moving from that to broadcast forums. This is very important as well. We know as soon as championships come around and the deeper your teams make it into the playoffs, that's when a lot of our radio stations and TV and live streamers come forward and say, hey, we want to broadcast that. Right here, something new that we've added is broadcast fees that will be listed under the communication link. And this is just a sample. Let me click on that and show you how easy it will be to get that done. The purpose of this is so it's more media friendly to where they're not chasing you down or chasing me down or one of the staff members to hand over cash or a check during an event or having to mail out a check and do that whole back and forth. So right here is something that they fill out when they're interested in doing that. It's got all the information that they need, I believe, and it'll have our prices and so forth. And then it comes directly to me and it can be accepted or declined. So if you want more information on that, just contact me here at the league office and we can discuss it and talk about it. But we're just trying to make things easier, more efficient for all of us. And this is just an added bonus this year to help you with your friends in the media. I want to mention also, I'm going to invite you, if you have yourself or someone on staff that has some meaningful words of encouragement or positivity, I ask that they take the time to submit a blog this year. Make a long story sport. That's something that we want to add even more stories and writings and features. So anything productive and positive about athletics, I encourage you to submit to me, and hopefully we can make that one of our posts. And closing out, final reminder, get into the routine on possibly, pick a day of the week. I'd say Monday, get into the routine of making the High School League's website one of your regular stops, whether it's how you start your morning off or, you spend a lunch hour just perusing this site. It's very, very detailed, lots of information. and two parts that I think you could never go wrong making part of your routine. And that would be checking our calendar, which is up here in the blue bar. We do put that information into news, but you never know when something's added to the calendar that Wednesday that might be of importance to you. So the calendar is one very important aspect of that. And the front page scroll, that's updated regularly. This right here, automatically, the most important things, most current things are right there. And again, please keep in touch and keep connected with our social media. Outside of that, if you have any questions that deal with the media, social media, or anything dealing with communication, my information is available along with the high school league staff right here. Again, on the website, you have put a name with a face and the areas that we are charged with. So if you have any questions, I'm open to take your call or your email. Outside of that, I think that that covers everything that I need to share with you. Amy, if there aren't any questions, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, I don't see any questions. Thanks, Tammy.
All right.
And we are almost finished. So if you all just hold on or hang in there with us, but we are almost done. Just want to share our tentative dates we have for our fall championships. You can see here, we'll start with swim on October 7th and 8th. And we move into volleyball November 3rd and 5th, cross country November 10th, 11th, competitive cheer the 19th, and then football December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So you can see these are the dates that we have tentatively scheduled. Dates, hopefully they will not change, but they possibly could depending on a venue or any unforeseen circumstances. We know we have dealt with issues with weather in the past, and if for some reason there is any change to a state championship date, we'll definitely get that information out to our member schools as quickly as possible. And before we end today, you will have a QR code that you'll be scanning before we get off the meeting today, but just want to share with you Max Preps. They are a partner with the high school league, and Max Preps basically provides a one location where standings, game results, statistical leaderboards, state records, media publications, and more can all be found. This platform provides schools with various desktop, tablet, and mobile options to keep their information accurate. So we're asked that coaches enter their rosters and schedules at the start of each season and need to report scores after each game. You can do this in the Max Preps Teams app or maxpreps.com. And if you need access, please contact Ryan Casey. You can see Ryan's email address for you there. And he can help you with your school and sport if your coach does not have access. And then Max Preps also has a help and support. Coaches can reach out to their 1-800 number or simply email them at support@maxpreps.com with any questions. But again, Max Preps is one of the partners with the South Carolina High School League. Upcoming meetings, so you can see your classification meetings that are listed here, the dates that your class will be meeting. As of right now, these meetings are scheduled to be in person. And then on October 13th, we will have a principal AD update meeting. That will be a virtual meeting. And we'll just kind of come to you with any information that we've seen in the fall, and then to go ahead and start getting you ready to prepare for those winter sports that will be coming up later this year. So again, we'll have a principal AD update meeting on October 13th. So we ask that you mark that on your calendar as well. And again, can't encourage you enough. Anytime you have questions, please reach out to our office. That is what we are here for. We know we covered a lot of information today. All of this information has been recorded. You can view it on the Rewind tab on our website. And you can definitely share it with coaches in your school or any other administrator that wishes to watch that. And with that, if you would, we ask that you scan the QR code. It'll pull up a jot form. And then you'll just simply make sure to put your name and your school when you fill it out for your attendance today. And once you have completed that, that will conclude